In today's weather forecast, we're going to break down all the details that you need to know about that storm system for the southeast and the northeast. What's the latest thinking on those rainfall totals? How much snowfall may accumulate? And how strong could these winds actually get? And then all eyes are on deck on the west as we brace for a few storms. So in today's weather forecast, we'll break down all those details. So to start things off, this look at the very latest European model for this afternoon on your Friday, December the 15th, 2023, and what you're looking at here, and I showed this in yesterday's video and you all really enjoyed it a lot, so I want to thank you all for that. This is the 500 millibar height forecast and cyclonic vorticity, which is the color shading. This is showing us how much spin there is in the atmosphere, right? That's our energy needed to generate bombogenesis or cyclogenesis or surface pressure falls at the surface. So this kind of gives us an idea where our weather system is, where our disturbances are in the mid-levels that usually correspond to the surface. So what we have here is we have this trough over Florida or over Oklahoma, over Texas, over the high plains. We also have another disturbance down here across the Gulf of Mexico. These two systems are going to phase up. So we're going to see a kind of a collision course with both of these systems over Florida. That's what most of the models indicate today as they did yesterday. And what we're going to see here is a very rapidly organizing, deepening system. So let's go forward in time and we can see this really shape up by tomorrow afternoon. This is by Saturday evening, by the way, right around, say, 6 to 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for the 16th of December. We can see where our disturbance here is. We have other little vorticities that we have on the map. So that's what the European model is showing here. And as we go forward, it really gets organized. A lot of that energy then gets bundled up and gets focused within this other shortwave trough. That's the one in the Gulf. And so we end up with one shortwave trough and we have another one coming out of Canada. Okay, so that's more of a Canadian low there because that's where your freezing line is. And take note, a lot of the colder air here is to the north of the system. So we're not talking any about heavy snowfall here. We're talking a lot about rainfall, flooding, strong winds, maybe even some severe weather as this interacts. And once we go into early next week, that system consolidates and kind of gets part of this other trough. And you can see here really digging down. So we have a very good dynamical situation here for the northeast. So now what does this look like at the surface? Well, when we take a look at our reflectivity forecast, this is basically the radar forecast on who's going to get the rain, when are you going to get the rain, and who is going to possibly even see some severe weather. You can see tornadoes out of this, folks, and of course the winds too going along with that. So this is for this afternoon for your Friday. So coming home from work, you're going to see some showers popping up from time to time. But again, models don't do the best here at showing us the exact conditions. This is just a forecast, but the NAM 3 kilometer thinks that Jacksonville, maybe Ocala, we might see a few pop-up storms this afternoon. And then especially down here in Palm Beach and Miami, Florida, south of Tampa, we could get in on a few bands of rainfall, maybe a pop-up thunderstorm too. This air mass is very moist and a little unsettled or a little unstable because we have that disturbance over the Gulf of Mexico as it moves further east with time. So now turning the clock forward now all the way into tomorrow morning, we can see, especially down here in Miami, we could have a lot of flooding. We have a lot of rainfall that's just going to be piling up here just south of Palm Beach in Miami. So if you're doing anything outdoors early in the morning, right around, say, 8 or 9 in the morning, just keep that in mind. The rain's going to be coming down. We might get some thunder and lightning out of this. So when thunder roars, go indoors. Pensacola, Tallahassee getting in on their fair share of rainfall. But we also got showers and storms going on across Louisiana. That's that kind of cold front that's going to interact with this other low pressure system at the surface. Remember the two systems I told you all about? They're going to phase into one over Florida and the southeast, and that's going to give us a lot of energy with this system. Now going into Saturday afternoon here into the evening hours is when the weather really deteriorates. This is right around 6 p.m. So around dinner time for your Saturday. Look at this band right here, some heavy rainfall, thunderstorms. We could see water spouts and tornadoes out of this. So just keep that in mind. Within this rain column, we might get a few embedded cells that are capable of producing more organized updrafts. We got another area of storms near Orlando, but look at all this fetch of moisture has to go somewhere, and it's going to go into Georgia and Florida, as you see here, Pensacola in on the mix. Now, going forward, this is when it really gets bad, okay? Especially overnight Saturday into Sunday. You could be woken up with down trees, power lines could come down. We could even see some, again, tornadoes out of this in the warm sector. On the northern side, we're probably not going to see much of that because we got cooler air, or more stable air, we should say, not really cooler air. But look at this, really coming down here at a pretty good clip over Tampa, Orlando, Ocala. So yeah, you'll hear it tomorrow night. I'll probably be live streaming if necessary. Valdosta, if you're in Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Savannah, Charleston, just keep that in mind. It's going to be coming down pretty good. And then really, my goodness, especially by the early morning hours of Sunday, if you're going to church, man, I'm just telling you all, just keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of storms. I mean, we got Jacksonville in the mix here. We got Palm Beach, Miami. Now, by the afternoon hours, we'll have to see on how the air mass destabilizes, because if we get any instability out ahead of this line, we could see tornadoes, and some of them could be a little organized and robust, not too terribly strong, but we have a lot of instability to also work with. So we might see a few tornadoes, strong winds for sure out of these storms, and even maybe some pea-size or even some quarter-size hail out of those storms as this disturbance moves over to the northeast here, eventually Cape Hatteras, Newport by Sunday night into early Monday morning. So yeah, a very wild one on the way. This is where I think the best chances of severe weather will be. It's again right within that warm sector where we have the wind shear, we have the lift that's involved, we have the moisture. So again, things to consider here. If you are south of this boundary, the kind of like right over Ocala, you have the instability in place. We could see severe weather because, again, you have that shear. You have winds out of the south, mid-level winds crossing over from the southwest that actually gets some crosswise or streamwise vorticity, and that organizes these updrafts, and we could see a few spin-ups. Now, the viewers or you are probably wondering about the Northeast. How is this going to shape up for you all living in that area on the on the I-95 corridor, right? If you're going up towards New York City, well, here's your answer. This look at the Euro. Unfortunately, we don't get our high-res models that far out in time yet, so we got to still rely on our global computer models. And so when we go forward in time, this is about 9 in the morning, or actually this is at about, say, 7 in the morning. I just realized this is a North America, Dakota time zone. Oh my gosh, I hope you guys understand that because my brain's all over the place today. Had some issues with Streamlabs, and I'm running behind schedule, so bear with me here, okay? So you can see that the system is going to be moving up the eastern seaboard. We got lots of rainfall, some darker green colors that indicates some light to moderate rainfall. Look at our surface flow down here, 981 millibars, very deep. We're going to definitely generate some strong winds, maybe near tropical storm force winds coming in out of the westerly direction. So offshore here, then the winds come onshore on the other side of the system. That usually results in storm surge and coastal flooding, and that will continue all the way into Monday morning, as you all see here, 977 millibars. So that's pretty deep. Limited snowfall, which is a good thing out of this, because Mark Sedeth actually made a tweet yesterday, if I recall, and I looked, and he clearly said, boy, if there could be a shot of Arctic air coming out of the north with this, interacting with this amount of moisture, whoa, we would be talking feet of snowfall across the Northeast. Thankfully, the timing of that cold air to the northwest and this system will not be in sync to where we are going to get feet of snow, and instead, we're only going to pick up a few inches in many areas. But just goes to show you, timing is everything, and fortunately, the timing of this and that cold air will not line up for us to get a snow beast type nor'easter, but nevertheless, still a highly impactful storm. Now, the one thing that this system is going to generate is some pretty strong winds, especially over the southeastern seaboard and then the eastern seaboard, because again, the dynamics, the air mass aloft, we got divergent flow, so we got diffluence, and then we got air moving up underneath it, and that lowers the surface pressures, and we tighten the pressure gradient, and that usually results in some really strong winds, and that's how we get bombogenesis going. So we can see that shaping up here by Sunday morning. Take note of those really strong winds over land in southern Georgia, northern and much of Florida. You have winds anywhere between 20 to 30 miles an hour, and then along the coast here of the Carolinas, we get some very strong winds, perhaps even 30 to 40 miles an hour. That's a very tight pressure gradient. Onshore winds here right along Cape Hatteras. We can even see winds nearing 55, even 60 miles an hour out of this. Look at that. You can see that southeasterly fetch of wind, taking note of how tight that pressure gradient is, and this goes up the eastern seaboard, bringing a lot with it, some wind, and of course the rainfall that you're all going to be contending with. So this will result in downed trees, power lines, and power outages. So just keep that in mind, and it's a good idea to also bring in your trash can, because those can blow over as well, unless you have tons of trash in your garbage can where it might be hard for it to fall over. But if your garbage can is empty like mine outside, you may want to hang on to that or put that inside, because it will fall over. I guarantee you're going to have a problem by finding your garbage can. Now, the big concern about this storm system will be the amount of rainfall that's going to come with this. Check this out. This is from the Weather Prediction Center. We got South Carolina involved here. Even say Savannah, Georgia, you could see 4 to even 5 inches of rainfall out of this system. And areas, say like in northern Florida, you might see as much as 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. So again, this amount of rainfall in a short amount of time will most certainly lead to a slight risk for flash flooding, urban flooding, street flooding. This is going to be a pretty impactful system, and I just hope you all are prepared for this. Apalachicola, Tallahassee, Gainesville, Jacksonville, Palm Coast, Daytona Beach, if you're in Orlando, if you're in Tampa, if you're in Fort Lauderdale, just keep that in mind. If you're down here in Key West, you're under a slight risk for heavy rainfall and flood potential. This continues all the way into day 3. If we could actually bring that up here, day 3 also looks pretty gnarly as well, especially for the eastern seaboard, where there is a slight risk for heavy rainfall, all the way from, say, Florence in South Carolina, Charlotte, Fayetteville, if you're in Greensboro, Richmond, Virginia Beach, if you're in Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, up across New York. I don't want to forget you all in Maryland there. If you're in Salisbury, if you're in Dover, Georgetown, and if we zoom in a little closer here, Easton, you're under a slight risk for heavy rainfall. This is a rain maker instead of a snow maker. So even so it's just a rainmaker, please take those precautions, because yes, water comes with danger as well. That's flooding. Maybe the snow is not so bad in some extent, but each variable has its own threats, right? So tornadoes, people like tornadoes, but they could also cause damage. Well, I'm not saying everyone likes tornadoes, but storm chasers like that stuff, right? And, you know, they cause damage, but they're cool to look at. Well, that's kind of there's pros and cons to everything. This is one of them. The flooding, the rain is good. Too much of it can lead to a lot of problems. Now let's talk about the West, because we're also going to get our fair share of heavy rainfall and some strong winds too. Yes, it's coming. Coast-to-coast action this weekend. So if you're in the Midwest, you're probably looking at the West, and you're looking at the East and be like, wow, they're dealing with their storms. At least it's dry for us. All right, and that's probably where it's going to be for a while. Okay, so this look at the Euro model for this afternoon. Actually, no, wait, this is for Saturday. Excuse me here. Yeah, this is for this afternoon. Sorry, I got my days mixed up. This is the 15th, and this is, again, a look at the 500 millibar cyclonic vorticity. This is a very good product that I like using because it gives us an idea where the dynamics are in the atmosphere. So one thing for sure, here's California. Here is our cutoff low. Now, the reason why this is becoming a cutoff low is because the atmosphere, just kind of the overall synoptic pattern. We have a ridge that is building in to the north of this. We also have a ridge that wants to build in too. So now what we have going on here is this ridge that wants to build to the north of this cutoff low. And this really has been a very, very tough forecast because models don't do very well with these cutoff lows. Where are they going to cut off at? How far east or how fast are they going to drift, right? This one's not going to drift very fast at all, and it's probably almost going to stall out through probably tonight into tomorrow. And so as we go into Sunday morning, we can see there is our vorticity now embedded within this. We have another speed max here. We have another vort max up here, and each one of these could bring in rounds of lift. Okay, moisture transport as well, strong winds and some deepening with the surface flow. And when we go forward into Monday morning, we can see we do have some energy that is over the California region. So we're looking at some moderate to heavy rainfall, potentially maybe even some bouts of heavy rainfall, thunderstorms perhaps on Monday, because we're going to have a little bit of wind shear. We're going to have a lot of moisture. More so, the thunderstorms this time, though, will contain some very intense downpours. A lot of water-loaded storms because we have a lot of moisture in the air in the deep layer for those. We're not going to see the variety where we get the large, or we get the small hail, we get the lightning. We might see a funnel cloud this time. I think we're going to see a lot of water-loaded storms where we can see quite a bit of concerns for flooding, especially on Monday and Tuesday. And this continues on through Tuesday, where we get that flow out of the southwesterly orographic lift, and then the next system comes on through. But the Euro hasn't had much impetus, has just not had much for California on this one, because again, up here you got a lot of ridging, and the flow does not allow this to push in our direction, and so these lows are going to be cut off, and they're going to be tough to forecast for a while. So taking a look at the US GFS model, since right now it is our latest model that is rendered this afternoon, and we can see, well, this morning, this is going to be delayed by a few hours, but you can see here over California, still a lot of rainfall, anywhere between 2 to 4 inches, and so we're now looking at a period, folks. Instead of maybe 3.5, maybe 4 days, we're probably going to see this kind of squish down to maybe 2.5 or so days. And so this amount of rainfall really asks the question, begs the question, are we going to see flooding now? Probably so on the small streams, small creeks, the street flooding. If there's any clogged storm drains, we could see some flooding. So make sure, if you haven't already, please unclog your storm drains. Clean the gutters out. Now is the time to do it. Don't do it Sunday or Monday, because the storm's going to come in here by Sunday afternoon. And so now is the time to do that, because we're going to have the wind, and we're also going to have the rainfall to contend with through the middle part of this week. But again, long story short, lots of rainfall is forecasted, okay? And therefore, please take precautions. We could see some flooding that could really cause some slowdowns out there. And that's really all we have with the rainfall, with maybe additional storms thereafter that could bring more additional rainfall. We really need it. I mean, we're behind normal for El Nino standards. Now, quickly looking at the snowfall total in the Sierra and in the Intermountain West, like the Cascades, most of it's going to fall over California, I think, because again, we got that orographic lift. We have enough cold air, at least in some portion of the level of the atmosphere. So snow levels on Sunday and Monday will start off at about 65, maybe 7,000 feet, and then drop down to about 5,500 feet on Tuesday and Wednesday once the colder air arrives. And so expect anywhere between 2 to 4 feet of snowfall above 7,000 feet, and maybe about a foot or so below that. So there will be some impacts for the mountains, but not as bad as it could be if these storms were much colder and they brought more moisture with them too. So this is a good thing. Fortunately, that maybe mountain travel could be not as bad of an impact, but still consider delays on going up to the mountains, especially when it rains really hard up there. We have a lot of orographic lift to contend with. One other thing to note is going to be the winds. Not as bad as the northeast or the eastern seaboard, but still, we're going to be looking at some breezy winds around our area as the first storm system comes in. And you can see that here by Sunday night into Monday, we have winds anywhere between 15 and 30 miles an hour. So again, enough to kind of cause some travel issues, especially if you're a high profile vehicle. And we still get the winds here on Tuesday and Wednesday. So not too terribly super windy. We're not going to talk about high wind warnings, but we're going to be looking at some breezy conditions more than, well, what it's like outside right now. In fact, in my home weather, out of my home weather office, we have virtually no wind at all. And we haven't had no wind at all for a few days. I mean, I would like to see some wind. We would like to see some circulation going on here. And then by Friday, the winds taper off. Well, that's going to sum it up for today's video, folks. I sure hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing if you are new to the channel. I want to thank you all for sharing yesterday's video. If I remember correctly, offhand, we had over 350 shares off of yesterday's video. So I really want to thank you all for sharing this with their family and friends on social media, and also hitting the like button and also subscribing. You guys mean so much to me, and that's why I got up at 5:45 this morning to make this video. Yes, this is going to be out in the afternoon because, yes, that's just how it's going to work. There's no way I can get this out in the morning because I have other things I need to do. And my internet's running exceptionally slow, so I think it's not going to be out. Hopefully it's out by 4 o'clock, okay? Don't count me on it, though. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with you more tomorrow.